Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome in the new Backbase webinar. Today's topic is the everyday banking. What you see here on the next slide is a little bit of the logistics. Thank you for joining, of course. If you like to ask questions, you can use the GoToMeeting webinar console, and you can go to the option questions and you ask them. We would like to do an interactive Q&A at the end of the webinar. If you'd like to participate and ask questions on Twitter, that's possible with hashtag Backbase. And very important, the webinar will be recorded, and also the slides and the recording will be shared with you in the next 48 hours. So everything is available for you to review and also to potentially share with your colleagues. Today, my name is Jouk Pleiter. I'm the CEO of Backbase, and I'm here with Tim Rutten. Welcome, Tim.
Thanks, Jouk.
Let's go really into the agenda. There we go. So today's topics for everyday banking. What is everyday banking? Basically, what we mean with everyday banking, and the topic for today is that how can we make banking as exciting as applications we see with Facebook or Instagram or Netflix or Amazon. People use these applications as part of their everyday life, and how are they going to be an inspirational factor or benchmark for what we can do in banking in the next five years. Okay, let's dig in. The key topics are pursue an omni-channel delivery model. Customers are everywhere, in social networks, on mobile devices, in browsers, in chat applications. So how can we make sure that the customer interactions are basically omni-channel in every location? The second point is that, and the second topic for today is how can we really start with the customer experience? So how do we start with customer first, digital first, forget about the limitations of existing legacy systems, but first really focus on creating a seamless customer journey. And then from there, how can we also start at the third point, how can we leverage third-party data, especially with PSD2 here in Europe, but also in other parts of the world? How can we use account aggregation to make a single overview? All right, and then finally, how can we use targeting mechanisms and artificial intelligence to make those journeys really interactive? Okay, can we make it over? There we go. So Tim, let's start maybe with the first topic. Maybe we can move it to the next slide. So let's take it a little bit more interactive. I think what we've seen, if we talk about omni-channel journeys, it's quite an abstract term. What it basically means is that what we see with companies like Netflix, we can start on a smartphone, we can use it on the television, we can use it in our tablets or web browsers, we can basically use it everywhere. I think the key question is now, how can we do this in banking? How can we move that? Maybe you can elaborate a little bit what we see here on the screen.
Yeah, sure. So the current slide that we have on the screen here is mentioning how we basically evolved going from single channel to multi-channel to cross to omni-channel. And that's essentially what you've seen the last 10, 15 years, if you will, regardless of the vertical that you're looking at. But specifically in banking, if you look at the left part of the slide, a single channel basically tells us that, let's say 10, 15 years ago, a customer in the bank have a single touch point, which in reality was a branch at that moment. If you go towards multi-channel, it's more different touch points, but they have different experiences, and they're not really let's say seamless across the different experiences that you might encounter there. And that's actually the first, let's say, coming to the first surface that there's a silo problem potentially over time. If you then go to cross-channel, you see that there's a unified brand through many touch points, but there's still functional silos that are actually driving this experience.
So this cross-channel is basically more on the let's say on the cosmetic side. It has the same look and feel, but still the different touch points are basically based on their silo. There are different code bases, different people. Yep. They live in different parts of the world. They don't really interact as one.
Exactly, hopping from screen to screen.
Clear.
Yeah. Now, and if you then go to omni-channel, this is of course what we're all aiming for, and this is where you have this true holistic brand experience. And that's of course what we're as Backbase always looking at achieving.
Okay, so let's dig in a little bit further what it means. If we go to the next slide. So I think the key challenge here is then for the people in the audience is that the multi-cross omni, whatever. But basically, I guess what it means is just like Netflix. How can we make a seamless customer journey where people can jump from one device to a different device and basically continue the work they were doing, right?
Yep.
I think that's kind of the real thing, what kind of we illustrate here in this picture.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that's not that easy. So because the reality, I guess, in the back end of the bank, it's all about we have different channels, we have different product groups, we have different teams. The internal organization as well as the internal systems are very fragmented.
Yep.
So I guess we like to think about, okay, how can we make sure that although most of the banks are more product centric, how can we transform this into more of a customer centric approach? And I do think a lot of banks are talking about customer centricity, but to really make it happen, it's a lot of hard work, I guess,
Yep.
to make something that can really operate across these different product silos and really create a single customer view and a single process orchestration across these different product groups and different backend systems. So these basically there shouldn't be handoffs. Basically, it should be one single seamless experience.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is also described by Forrester Research. They basically have a very strong vision where they say, in banking, we need to move from channel islands into omni-channel. So what you see here on the left side of the picture is basically several decades of technology. The first generation was, of course, in the branch. Then we saw a new wave of technology called call centers or customer contact center technology. Then 10 years later, we saw internet technology, another wave. And today it's all about mobile. But basically, it's all new technology waves. Every 10 years, we have a new technology to interact with the client. And as a result of this evolution and as a result of these new technologies, basically the banks created a lot of customer interaction islands, basically to stuff and push stuff to the customer. But unfortunately, these islands are all based on different technology providers, different code bases. Maybe on the outside, if you're lucky, they have a similar look and feel, but fundamentally, they cannot work together. So Tim, maybe you can elaborate a little bit. If this is the current situation, how do you move into omni-channel? What is an omni-channel banking architecture?
Yeah, so that's exactly what was also outlined in the Forrester paper. If you look at the right side of this slide, you find that we mentioned the notion of an omni-channel CXP. An omni-channel CXP is a so-called customer experience platform. And essentially it means that you overlay all of these different silos that you see at the bottom right of this slide. So you have these multiple legacy apps, these multiple silos, if you will. And you basically abstract them away by putting an omni-channel customer experience platform in place. And that means that you basically abstract away all of the complexity of the underlying silos. And from there onward, you start presenting out all of these capabilities and these functionalities through very lightweight, modern web applications that we refer to as widgets. And in essence, what we're doing here is leveraging modern day standards, modern day technologies to simplify this journey without introducing a lot of new technologies or very heavyweight, let's say, proprietary technologies. And if you then compare, let's say, the left right to the right side of this slide, you see that on the right side, we have true flexibility regardless of the underlying landscape. So we truly, let's say, decouple the backend from the front end. And in this case, we power all of these channels that are currently there. And in the future, Jouk, correct me if I'm wrong, there's definitely going to be some more channels.
Yeah, but how, I mean, I look at this picture and I think conceptually, I can imagine a lot of people in the audience say, yeah, great, we all like to be like Netflix, but this sounds like a huge undertaking. For instance, do I need to replace everything? Do I need to do all of this at once?
Mm-hmm. No, you do not. And that's the beauty of this type of approach. Because it's truly decoupled, you can basically make those decisions on a case-by-case basis.
So, for instance, if I have a mobile application, I can start to implement that in an omni-channel way, and then subsequently move and use the same platform for online banking or kiosk or
correct
teller applications.
Yeah.
How does that typically work? Can you talk a little bit so the audience can basically have a better understanding of how you can make this work? I mean, the picture is nice, and I guess most people conceptually will agree with this, but
yep.
It's almost it's like boiling a big ocean. It's a big endeavor.
Sure. So you have to take it piece by piece. So
right.
Dependent on the customer case, we either see that they have an ambition to go mobile first, and then it's really boxed within the mobile application, and that's the number one channel that we're going to go for. With other banks, it's retail banking first, or perhaps it's an employee dashboard first. And basically, that's where the real project initiative starts, boxed into a specific subset of functionality and capability,
yeah.
which we typically refer to as an MVP, the minimum viable product.
Mm-hmm.
And from there onwards, again, usually focusing on one channel first, that will be the first initiative. And from there onwards, you start let's say, rolling it out into different types of verticals or needs that you might have within the bank.
So if I create a capability, you have the word widget here. I create something end to end, like something for to enable my MVP for the mobile application. Can I reuse that capability in that code base to empower different channels or different devices?
Yeah, that's the beauty. So even if you begin small, everything that you start building from a widget perspective or an integration perspective is end to end reusable.
So this thing almost sounds like it's like an orchestration thing. It can communicate to the back. It can get any data or functionality out whatever backend system. It will expose it properly, nicely in a UI, either a mobile UI or a web UI, and I can use that capability to an end customer, an affiliate, an employee, an advisor. So it's all about reuse.
Correct.
Well, okay, Clay. Thanks for clarifying, Tim. If we go to the next part, I think having a platform like this or having an omni-channel architecture, as we previously described, is nice, but the technology itself is only one aspect. I think it's also about how do you utilize the platform. And especially if you think about omni-channel and a Netflix-like experience, we see more with our clients that people start to talk about service design. And the key question first, I guess, is what is service design? And maybe we can elaborate a little bit on this, Tim. But in general, with service design, it really starts to think and look. It starts with the customer. It looks at a task for the customer, and then it's going to analyze what different touch points you have, like a smartphone, like a tablet, like a call center, like a branch. And it basically gives the banks a perspective. How can we help this customer to execute a certain task, like getting a loan, applying for a mortgage, and getting it approved? How can we have the different customer touch points, both digital as well as brick and mortar? How can we make them collaborate so we can do this for the customer in the shortest and the most simple approach, right? I think that's kind of the key thing. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit more? What did you see with clients? How do they approach service design or user experience design? Anything you can share?
Yeah. I think the most interesting thing to share is that it's typically relatively new to the banks. To really go customer first, especially on the digital channel. But what you find there is that they build up a new type of team that really has this digital DNA, that understands what a Netflix brings or an Amazon or any of those other players, and starts using that rationale. We call it service design. There's many multiple definitions we see in the market there. But from there onwards, it's really about becoming truly agile and truly understanding customers' needs first before designing something, before building and implementing something. And that reverse of thought is something that's typically a big challenge within any organization. And well, I always find it within the banks we work with as well, to make that transition first.
So also here, right. So also here, I think, great, beautiful. And I think you and I have been visiting many banks around the world where we see these huge rooms where people have these beautiful pictures, how they did service design, and everything is sketched out. And a bunch of customer research agencies went completely wild on, so lots of very valuable insights, but again, it's massive. How do you translate that into something executable? You were using the word MVP. How does that work?
Basically, an MVP, minimum viable product, means that you really focus on what's truly directly valuable to the customer. Meaning you focus on delivering business value versus anything else. And that's basically where you make the split between a pure technology investment and a pure functionality capability investment.
Does it also then mean that an MVP is okay, that most of the stuff is done on a smartphone first and you don't try to immediately empower employees or advisors in your phase one? So you can again start smaller, but then over time reuse the same capabilities to make it broader? Correct.
You slice it up. And what I mentioned in my previous point, really driving business value. So what's the end customer actually expecting from the first release? And that's not going to be everything. That's not this time of age.
I guess everything is probably going to paralyze a lot of these projects. It will probably make it too big, too complex. If you try to eat this whole big elephant at once, you're probably going to be stuck with a mega project, and people, it's too big for people to comprehend. Actually,
that's waterfall. That's not what you should do, of course. So that's where we typically use the Agile Scrum methodology, meaning you slice it up in smaller buckets. You have smaller sprints of 2 weeks. There's a lot of let's say physical interaction with the actual end user. That is a constant feedback loop, both from a technical as well as a value business perspective. And from there onwards, the bank automatically becomes more customer first.
So suppose I'm a bank and I'm in a hurry. So I like to start small, but I need to do a lot of stuff. So would it make sense to have multiple agile teams to work in parallel to basically digest a larger scope?
Yes, as long as you manage it properly.
Yeah.
So there's a methodology you would need to follow there. You need to be aware of how that methodology works, and you need to empower the teams to actually make those decisions as instructed by Agile.
Yeah.
And if you do so, then indeed multiple teams can drive multiple capabilities.
Nice.
Yeah.
Super. Okay. Maybe we can go to the next topic.
Sure.
Start with the customer experience, and maybe one small example to start with is the mobile Uber app. What do you like about this app? Why is it important to you? I know you're using it quite frequently.
Yeah. I think simply if I open it up, it directly does what I'm expecting it to do.
Yeah.
Especially since the latest release. Wherever I fly, whichever city I get out of the airplane, if I exit the airport and I open up the app, it directly has the most relevant, I think 2 or 3 addresses on there already.
Yeah.
And typically I'm revisiting a client.
Yeah.
So I basically tap that client and off we go.
So there's already also, it's convenient. You push the app, it's there, and you can get a ride.
Yep.
But it also now starts to become more intelligent, right?
Oh, yeah.
It starts to use artificial intelligence to basically already almost like slightly predict the most likely destinations you're going to
It does. The fact that I can get a ride is not very interesting anymore. But the fact that it's
so it's already next level. Initially, we were already very excited, just like instant, the car will be here, no hassle. And now kind of it's now next level is it also starts to think on behalf of you.
Yeah. For getting transportation, I've got multiple options, but this is the easiest one at this moment. So it's truly customer first, I would say.
Yeah, cool. All right. So I guess if we analyze a little bit, it's easy to say customer first. And I think a lot of people in the past have been paying lip service to the customer experience and customer first mantra. But I guess it requires a lot of hard work to really make it that easy, right? Mm-hmm. If we look at an Uber, like there's massive investment in technology to make that happen. So that's what we see here on this next slide. The customer behavior is shifting, and in a lot of banks in the past, it all started with the internal core systems or the internal IT capabilities. But I guess if we look at these digital disruptors like an Uber or a Facebook, they start slightly different. They don't start with their internal IT. They start with the customer first. So they start to think about, what is the context of the user? What is the instant need of that user at a given moment? Like you arrive on an airport or you're somewhere and you need a ride. Mm-hmm. How can we apply this concept into financial services? So I guess the tricky part here is, or the insightful part here is probably forget about banking.
Yeah.
Forget about IT.
We're getting the ingredients somewhere else.
At least we have to think about it later. But stage one is ignore, pause, park it for a moment. And first, let's really look at this end customer and think about what would be a seamless, a frictionless type of interaction for this user to help them to accomplish their goals.
Yeah.
Cool. So I guess this picture is very important with the mindset that every solid, every journey bank initiative really started with user research, personas, identifying the most common used tasks by this person, their life events, their needs. So it's going to be user driven, life event driven, or need based driven. And from there, we're going to figure out how digital technology can make that process as easy as possible. And optionally, of course, how a brick and mortar process is it required at all? Mm-hmm. Can we completely make it digital, straight to paperless would be ideal? Or is there still a possibility and an added value for real human interaction, I guess? Right? Okay, so that's a little bit about the mindset of creating an everyday bank. If we then go to the next slide, maybe Tim, we can talk a little bit more about it. If we look at the title, it's all about design for moments of truth. Mm-hmm. What do we mean with that?
So moment of truth, those could be moments where there's either a live event in the context of the person.
Yep.
Perhaps you're looking to buy, for instance, a new house. You're looking to get a mortgage. Maybe there's other, let's say, elements happening within your vicinity. Those are moments of truth where you really expect the bank to work with you or the app to work with you. And by now, and probably you'll find it in your own private experience as well, if I'm downloading this new hottest thing in town, whether it's an Uber app or something else, wherever I go, I expect it to be really helpful and really seamless and easy.
Yeah.
If it isn't, I'm out.
Yeah, but you're also like one of these Gen Y people. You are very impatient already, right? So
I'm spoiled, probably.
Okay. Yeah, but with your bank, you're probably not that spoiled.
Well, depends on which bank you're banking with.
Yeah.
I appreciate mine, but there's always the moment of truth means if it's consistently going well, then I have a really good experience.
Perfect.
If it's offbeat, then
Yeah.
I will get frustrated.
Yeah.
And the share of people that have that frustration by now is growing rapidly, I would say.
Yeah. No, I have to say, I think it is applicable for people of every generation. I'm kind of mid-40s, and last time I was in the branch ages ago.
Yep.
I really would, totally frustrating to go there. So if we think about moments of truth, is basically how can we help the customers in those moments where they need to accomplish a task, like finding a taxi ride, or now in the financial context of the bank or an insurance company, identify those mobile moments or contextual moments, then start to design. But what is also really nice here is kind of the lean startup philosophy.
Yeah.
How does that apply to you if you look at this circle?
Well, basically the circle starts with what is really needed. What's the problem? What task are we trying to solve here? What's the value of that task? And after that, once we've really understood what the real need is there, then we start to design something. And that designing doesn't mean that you directly have the answer, because once you get into engineering and analysis, you find it's a circle. So it keeps on going.
I think that also goes back to the minimum viable product principle, MVP principle. Don't try to predict and design this whole thing in one go. Start small, engineer a prototype, give it to an end user, analyze, you get the feedback, you go live. You go live with a basic feature set, like really the basics. And I think most of these disruptors and new neobanks and basically any great mobile app, it starts relatively small with a very strong concept.
Yep.
It really starts to solve a basic, important problem really well. That's the minimum viable product. And then from there, you can expand.
Yep.
I think the benefit with that is you get instant customer feedback. You can incorporate that feedback in your next iteration. Iterations can stay relatively small. You can create new value based on customer insights, maybe in 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, but you try to keep it as small as possible, and I guess you keep it agile, directly connected to the customer.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. So maybe we can actually do a demo with a few examples, Tim. So maybe we can switch to your let's see if we can switch to your phone.
Yes, we can. There we are.
Cool.
All right. So the first demo I would like to show to the audience is what we also recently demoed in London at the Finovate stage. And initially what we introduced as a concept is the fact that there is this smart assistant. And the smart assistant is a crucial piece within the everyday banking concept, at least we believe. And that smart assistant in reality is the bank. And it has many multiple forms of what it could look like on either your device or on your web browser experience or your tablet experience. And in this case, the example that I'm giving you here is mostly driven by your geographic location. So in this case, for instance, this morning I was walking towards the office because I live relatively close. And the bank had a surprise for me. And that surprise was actually a triggered notification, which is relevant to me as an end customer. And this is what it looked like. So basically, directly on my mobile device, let's say fully within the native capabilities of the platform, I receive a so-called voucher. And this voucher, in this example, it's a coffee voucher because I always walk past one of my favorite coffee shops here. In reality, it could be any type of voucher from any type of, let's say, third-party vendor or perhaps from the bank directly, where in essence, without going into my banking application, without actually, let's say, giving input or triggering it in any other sense than just having a relationship with that bank, I get approached with relevant offers, relevant advice, relevant, let's say, campaigns. Now, this can of course be very, let's say, marketing alike. Maybe even it feels spammy to you right now. However, the reality is that this is all driven by my own permission set. So whatever I want to receive on a daily basis or on a weekly basis, via which type of channel I would prefer, that's how the bank can work with you and communicate with you. And in this example, coffee shop voucher, I can basically walk into the coffee shop right now, get a free coffee, use the QR code that you see on the screen here, or perhaps use my NFC on the iPhone, and basically that would settle the debt with the point of sales terminal.
Cool. So interestingly enough, maybe a few observations here, just to kind of explain the concept properly. Something like an everyday bank can also then, it can be everywhere. You don't have to go into the mobile banking app.
Yep.
So this is directly the bank communicating with you in the context of your normal mobile device.
Yep.
Without the need to go into the app.
Correct.
So that's an important aspect, I guess, both communication-wise, which you also integrate here with the Apple Wallet.
Yep.
You can use the common capabilities, so you're seamlessly embedded in I would say, the mobile life of the end customer.
Correct.
All right, so that's one thing. The second part, I guess, is this could be extremely annoying if it happens, if it's irrelevant.
If it's irrelevant,
it's happening too often, right?
Yeah.
So how do you see a future where we say, okay, these concepts are nice, we have geolocation, we have beacons, we have all that stuff. So we pretty much, but it also, it could be annoying, or it could even be a little bit freaky.
Yep.
How do you see the consumers educating the bank on what is the right frequency and the right privacy level?
Yeah, so I think in short, technology allows you to do anything in this case. So whether you're using beacons or geofencing or any of those types, you can use it. But there always has to be this reality check of what do we really present out to the customer, why, when, and how. And in this case, this is just a vanilla example where I think that the most important part of this concept is also the fact that it's the decision of the customer. How do you want to be reached? How often? Via which channels? And what type of flavor of content is relevant to you? And it's not necessarily the banks to decide, right? It's the customers to decide at this stage.
Okay, then we can continue to the next part of what you would like to show.
Sure. All right, so the second thing I would like to show you is a look into an everyday banking scenario where in reality I'm looking to buy a bike. I've been saving up money for a while now for a designer bike, a Dutch one, Van Move. And before I actually go out and go to the store, I first want to check my account balance. So I'm going to be logging in with Touch ID. And once we get into my banking application, you find that I have multiple types of, let's say, accounts available here. The first one is my day-to-day account. And the second one is my savings account, which has the title of a designer bike because I've been saving for it. Now I have an amount of 4,500 euros here. That seems sufficient. So let's imagine that right now I'm walking out, I'm buying the bike, and I get back into the webinar right here. So I bought the bike for, I think it's going to be 2,000 euros. And you can see that the money has been deducted from the account. I've just done a debit card payment. Now the interesting thing is, because I've given the bank in this case the permission to target me with relevant advice, relevant offers, relevant insights, it can also use this particular transaction to help me. And in this case, helping means presenting a message stating regarding your latest purchase. So if you look at the top of my screen, it gives me this notification. And once I open up that notification, you find that we get into a so-called personal assistant. Now, this is one of these UX metaphors that we as Backbase see all across the globe right now in all of the different businesses that you could imagine. It's the next big thing, we believe. And what you find here is that this personal assistant, driven by AI types of technology, is helping me to make proper decisions. And in this case, the first text it's sharing with me is, hey, Tim, we see you've spent 2,000 euros in the bike shop today. Would it be helpful to look at insurance? Now, of course, it's an expensive bike, so I think it's a relevant type of question that the personal assistant is asking me here. Now, from there onwards, there's a few questions that we need to fill out to get a proper understanding of what type of product I just acquired. And in this case, it's an electrical bike, and I'd like to have coverage until 75%. What you find here is that this is one of those generic capabilities where you can introduce a wizard type of flow, if you will, to help customers make decisions or give input towards a personal assistant. If I now tap confirm, the personal assistant is actually finding valid options. So there we go. There's a few outcomes. So apparently there's 3 insurance packages that are fitting my requirements. The first one is an 80% coverage for 1, 2, or 3 years. The second one is full coverage flexible. And then the last one is full coverage for a fixed term of 3 years. Well, I like the flexibility, so I'm going to go with Hiscox. And actually to confirm it, because the bank already has all of my information, all of my relevant data, the only thing I need to do is to authorize this. And by authorizing it, I simply need to tap on authorize. It opens up one of our security mechanisms. And through simply confirming with my eyes, I go through and I confirm that this insurance policy is something I would like to acquire. And that's basically the end of flow for this type of user scenario where I go out in the physical world, buy a bike. From there onwards, my smart assistant, in this case within the mobile banking application, but could also be outside of it, as we just saw, triggers me to think about my purchase and helps me make a decision on an insurance package. And again, it's a generic example. can go into multiple directions.
Wow, really cool. So so also again, maybe to summarize this one. So I guess in the context, like a live event, you buy the bike. Apparently, you authorize the bank in the background to follow your payment history or your payment behavior.
Yep.
They can do a real-time analysis.
Yep.
They are apparently using some smart technology, maybe AI or whatever, to make an impact, and they can come up with that smart recommendation.
Correct. Yeah.
Right. Okay, and then apparently also here, just to really understand it, these insurance products, are they directly provided by the bank, or are they maybe actioning as an aggregator?
Yep.
Or both?
It could be both. So in this case, we're showing 3 different options from external players, external insurance providers, if you will. In reality, it can be a blend between our own products or the bank's own products and external products.
Yeah.
And perhaps even beat them in terms of competition.
Yeah. And why do you have this kind of chat user interface? Does it have to be chat, or why?
No, it definitely does not have to be chat. However, we believe that a conversational style dialogue was a very good application for this particular example.
Yeah.
It's just one of those new UX metaphors out there that really helps any type of customer, young, old, to really have a proper flow there.
And is this human driven, or is this a human person doing this in a call center, or is it a computer basically doing the full automated dialogue?
Yeah. So in this example, it's an automated dialogue, just to introduce what that will look like.
Yeah.
In reality, there can definitely be opportunities to actually talk to a real representative.
So it also could be human assisted. It's either, typically in this case, especially if you do this at scale, you probably would like to have this fully automated.
Yes.
But in cases where need be, it could be human assisted as well.
Or if there's a high net worth transaction that you can signal, then pretty much you can say, okay, this is where we inject a real representative.
Yeah. But if I look at this, do you want to go to a branch?
No.
There's no need.
No.
Everything can be on the, do you even need a browser, a desktop anymore?
No.
So you think mobile would be sufficient basically to do everything? That's interesting. So that would also make omni-channel very simple. Just one channel.
One channel mobile.
Let's see about that future. All right, cool, interesting. I think that's very nice demo to really show. If we talk about experience design, moments of truth, I hope for everybody in the audience, kind of this gives you a nice flavor for how that can look like. Maybe we can go back to the presentation.
Sure.
Okay, cool. So maybe a short summary. What you see, what you just saw in the demo is basically what we call a customer-first approach, right? It all starts with the customer. Let's compare this approach a little bit with a classic approach we've seen in the past with most banks. In many classic banks and in kind of the classic way of thinking, it didn't start with the customer, but it basically started with some of the core systems that have product information, and the bank started to use channels like websites, like call center, like even mobile to push these products to the customer. So the starting point is basically the product or the bank, and it's a big push through these channels to the customer. So the paradigm is pretty much inside out. I think moving into this new future where the customer is really first and everything is led by digital devices, we probably need to see a paradigm shift where we can start on the outside. So an outside-in approach. And this is literally a paradigm shift. And this paradigm shift, this customer-first approach, will also, we believe, have an impact on the technology stack for the bank. Where I think in the classic technology stack, the legacy systems were big and bloated, and there's lots of different silo channel technologies. We believe that it will move from more of a vertical siloed approach into a horizontal approach, where you need to have power in the way you do UX, power in the way you understand the data of the customer, their preferences, their previous behavior, and you can make interpretations and insights out of that data. And you can actually utilize and orchestrate both these insights and the UX delivery omni-channel. So it basically moves from inside out. Let's go back from inside out to outside in. So a paradigm shift, it starts here, and then also it moves from vertical into an horizontal architecture, where UX, data, and omni-channel orchestration are going to be very important components of the everyday bank future. All right, so to kind of summarize this, it's all about outside in. If you want to start with the customer experience, and if you believe that you need to create an Uber-like type of experience, it's all about having the flexibility. What you see here in this picture is something people to refer to as the two-speed architecture. A a lot of people would like to be very customer centric and they would like to create nice mobile apps. But if these mobile apps are still dictated by the innovation speed of core systems, it will be very hard. Therefore, it's very important to have a decoupled or a loosely coupled presentation layer, like the green part you see here, that can sit on top of your core systems. It can still, via the diamond here, leverage all the information, the data, the products you still have here, but you don't need to change this landscape. It can operate at its own speed. You can decide if you want to modernize it or not. You can keep it as is, but you can actually start to innovate way more faster and see a faster heartbeat, but also you can really innovate with the customer in mind first, creating those seamless experiences we just saw in Tim's demo. All right, let's move on to the final topic. How can we leverage PSD2 and account aggregation? So maybe it's important to first again give an example. If I go to Amazon, you basically can buy any product. Everything is there. I don't have to go to multiple shops. I don't have to go to different e-retailers. I can just go to one single place. And Amazon is basically aggregating every product on the planet. And I can search it and find it on Amazon. And I can get it shipped within Amazon, typically overnight. So what is very interesting in this metaphor is that they provide a one-stop shop. Mm-hmm. So if we translate this into banking, how is the current landscape? I don't know about you, Tim, but I have multiple bank accounts with different institutions. I've got several insurance with different institutions, pension, some wealth management for the future. It's all pretty scattered around different providers. So for me, unless I keep it in some sort of a spreadsheet, which I need to maintain manually, it is impossible to have a nice single overview of my financial life. Yeah. How about you?
Yeah, similar. I mean, I keep a spreadsheet, but
you do a spreadsheet? Yeah, same here.
It's cumbersome though.
It's cumbersome. So I guess without going into all the details of the PSD2 derivative, and I think it's a global movement, it's basically globally, how can we move into a future where you as a customer, you basically have access to a app, a web application, a mobile application that will aggregate information from multiple providers into a single view so you can have your My Financial Life. And I think the acronym PSD2 is nice, but this is happening in Latin America, South Africa, Asia Pacific, the US. It's basically a global movement, and it's called account aggregation. Seamless account aggregation to make sure that via APIs, application programming interfaces, it's basically an agreement that banks start to open up the data and the functionality they have. They typically now only expose via internet banking or mobile banking to their customers directly. Mm-hmm. They now start to expose that faceless, so without an app. So third-party banks, but also third-party fintechs or e-commerce players can actually consume that data and make it part of a more seamless customer experience. Anything you'd like to add to that, or?
No, I think it's highly exciting because the battle is going to be on the customer experience now.
Yeah, especially now with this whole regulation where banks in the next 2-3 years are going to be forced to share that data. They cannot hijack the customer within those safe, walls of security. Yeah. They now have to expose the data in a secure fashion. Yeah. And then apparently, I guess then, but as a consumer, you probably need to authorize the third-party app to have access to your data.
Sure.
In a way, it sounds a little bit scary, right? I mean, there is an app, a provider, and you as the consumer, you need to authorize that app to access your data.
Yeah.
You have to give permission, right?
Sure. It's all about the customer making sure.
And what do you think? People are going to trust that?
It depends a bit on which type of, let's say, age bracket you're in. But for sure, the younger crowd will be very, say, easygoing with that. Mm-hmm. But in reality, it needs education. Yeah. Right? The market needs to be educated on how does this work and how is it relevant to your everyday, let's say, banking experience.
Yeah. All right. So I guess if this is going to happen, and this is definitely part of the everyday banking perspective, what you will see is that in the banking or financial services industry in general, the parties, the different market parties, both banks and insurers, will open up and will be forced to open up customer data.
Yep.
And I guess this is already happening in e-commerce. It's already happening in the travel industry. In a lot of industries, this is already a fact. And any aggregator can combine data and make new meaningful applications. I think also with Facebook, with Apple, with Amazon, all these players have platforms. They expose the platform capabilities via their mobile app, but they also expose it at a developer level via those APIs. And the reason, I guess, why they do this is because they can get more traffic to their platform. And they create an open ecosystem of developers that can create more value on top of their platform.
Oh.
Something similar is going to happen in banking. Banks probably have to open up quite significantly, although maybe reluctantly, it has to open up.
Mm-hmm.
But more importantly also, next to opening up, banks have a huge opportunity to actually consume APIs from competitor banks,
yep.
from non-banks. So from the moment you have that, you basically have a whole new innovation space where in those apps you just showed us, Tim, we can now have stuff that is directly powered by the core banking system and the internal systems of the bank, but they can now fuse in or blend in new capabilities from basically any third-party API provider.
Yep, exactly.
Wasn't that also the case with the insurance, that you already can go to an insurance firm, you get their quotes, and in real time you can assemble 3 options and you can resell those insurances?
Similar concept.
Policies?
Yes.
Very similar.
Very similar.
All right. So without going too much in this into the details of this slide, but basically what we believe that with the everyday bank, APIs are going to create a whole new space of innovation where we can create composite applications. And also very importantly, where we can enable customers to access their financial data with third-party banks.
Yep.
Maybe it would be nice to go into a short demo.
Yeah, let's do it. Give me 1 second. All right, so let's go back to okay, I think we should be good again. So going back into the flow of the demo that I was showing before, we just had a first example with a notification because of my location. The second thing was we buy a bike and there's a relevant targeted offering related to that bike. Now the third story I want to talk about today is the one of the PSD2 example. Now what we see here is as following. So first of all, at the bottom of the screen, you see that there's an Add External Product button. And this basically triggers the procedure of adding new types of financial accounts to my aggregate overview that we're looking at here. Now, in order to do so, I'm going to tap Add External Product, and that again triggers this personal assistant. And again, this is one of those metaphors that we're using here. In reality, it could be any type of UX metaphor or pattern. In this case, we're going to be adding a bank called ING. And from there onwards, it's all about the authorization step. Now, the authorization step has to happen with the actual third-party bank, which in this case is ING. So if I tap Authorize, you'll find that a few things are going to be happening. First of all, it opens up another application. In this case, the ING Bank's application, which I also have locally on my mobile device. In order to get into that application, actually get into the next step, I need to first log in with Touch ID. So that's done. Then from there onwards, we see a so-called authorization screen. And this one is very similar to what you might have seen with Facebook, Twitter, Google Apps, all those types of providers. And what you essentially see here is that the Backbase application is requesting access to data from ING in this case. Now you see that it says Backbase Bank will have access to the following account: savings, or credit card. And in this example, I just want to pull in the information from my credit card. If I now tap Authorize, we go back to the Backbase application, we get back into the personal assistant, and as a final step, it asks me, do you like to add this to your account overview? Now in this case, it actually makes sense to put it in there because I want to have this aggregated overview. So not having these spreadsheets that Jouk and I were just talking about, but actually having this composite, seamless overview of all of my products. So I get back to the landing page of my mobile app, and you see a few things happening. First of all, on the bottom, you see that we have external products. And these could be any type of products, right? It could be insurance products, mortgage, loans, and in this case, we have a credit card. Then on top, you see that we have the notion of an aggregated balance, right? 3,508. Now, if I go back to the bottom, you see that this credit card has a limit of 5,000, and I've spent 1,337. Now, because the bank in this case has all, basically has full access to all of the relevant data, it can again trigger me with relevant notifications. So in this case, because I have an amount outstanding on the card, it basically tells me via notification, as we see on top, your ING credit card is overdue. If I hit that notification, we again get into a conversation, and this conversation is really helping me in a financial way. And the particular setting here is the fact that the settlement of my credit card with ING Bank is overdue, and it's costing me 187 euros 18 monthly, which is of course a waste of my money. Now in this case, as you might recall, the bike was a bit cheaper, so we have some money left in my savings account, and basically the personal assistant is helping me by stating, hey, do you want to use your savings account to settle the outstanding amount of 1,337? Makes sense? So I tap yes, and as a next step, I'm presented with a payments widget already pre-filled, so it's very simple for me to say, I want to pay that one. I again confirm with Touch ID, and there we are. I'm now debt-free. So if you look at this type of journey, it's another context. It's similar, let's say, UX patterns, but again, it's very much about helping me as an end customer make relevant financial decisions. If we now go back to the starting screen, you find that indeed it automatically cleans up my credit card. My savings account has a small deduction there. And from here onwards, we're considered debt-free, at least on this external credit card. What might be even nicer, and this is definitely the future that we're going for, is the fact that at this particular point in time, it's again some kind of a moment of truth, right? The credit card is fully settled, so I'm actually ready to move around if I want to. And in this case, the bank is able to provide me with a more relevant offer. Let's call it the Backbase credit card for now, which has a better APR, better insurance, and free withdrawals worldwide, just as an example. And in this case, it's very much on the moment of truth of adding a card, settling it, and hey, there's actually an upsell opportunity here. And again, this upsell opportunity could be anything, but in this case, a credit card really makes sense. So I'm going to tap Get Card. I confirm with Touch ID, and we now automatically in the background provision this new credit card, which is actually with the bank that I am banking with. So PSD2 is not just a, let's say, compliance issue or maybe even a competitive issue that you might have in your SWOT analysis, but it's also a huge opportunity. Back to you, Jouk.
I guess a huge sales opportunity, right?
Yeah.
Because you are able to integrate this ING credit card into your mobile app.
Yep.
You basically are also able to pay it directly, or you reduce your debt to zero.
Yep.
But then the more strikingly part, how quickly were you able just to make a counter offer?
Yep.
And just replace that with a more attractive card. So basically, ING now is flat. You're probably going to have this credit card with ING on idle, and within a few seconds you replace it.
Exactly.
Wow. All right. So let's also then try to summarize what we just saw here. Account aggregation is the keyword. Forget about the PSD2 acronym. It's all about the future of banking will enable you to create banking applications that will empower your customer to see everything they have with you as the primary financial institution of choice, but also it will enable the end customer to activate and give access to information and products they have with third parties. So you can now create a single my customer, my financial life type of application. You don't have to work with spreadsheets anymore. You can really create an aggregated overview of the different financial products and services you as a consumer have.
Mm-hmm.
Directives like the Payment Service Directive 2, the PSD2 directive will move the industry in this direction, but also account aggregation in general and the API economy will drive the industry in this direction. Okay, let's go back to the PowerPoint.
Sure. There we go.
Okay, let's summarize it, and then also we can wrap it up and go to the Q&A. To summarize it, the everyday bank will not be just directly with a single bank, but it will enable the bank and the end customer to have an aggregated overview, as you can see here. So in the picture, we can now create a central capability that will have access to multiple banks. We can openly via APIs access the data, and we can use that data in multiple applications that are customer first. I think you as a bank have a choice. Either you are on this side and you are forced to provide the data, or you can also be on this side and you actually can leverage the data. So ideally you are at both. The more interesting part from a business point of view is that you are here. You can consume it from any other third-party bank, your own data and any third-party data. You can make that into a meaningful customer experience, customer first type of experience. The second takeaway, this open API economy will give the digital banking platform access to a lot of very valuable data about customer behavior, within the banking systems, but also from outside data sources. So one key thing moving into the future is to think about real-time targeting, leveraging artificial intelligence technologies to actually leverage that data, make real-time interpretations on top of that data, create valuable insights directly to the end customer to help them make better financial decisions. So it's that how do we use all of this data, in-house data, external data, to create valuable insights, both for the end customer as well as potentially for the bank. Let's summarize this as cross and upsell. Just like you saw with the credit card with ING, it's very powerful to use that data for cross and upselling. Okay, let's go to the summary and then into the Q&A. A little bit about Backbase. Backbase is a software company. We are the creators of the Backbase digital banking platform, and basically we are on a mission to create Uber or Netflix or Facebook-like applications for banks around the world. We typically work with medium and large banks on every continent in the world, from New Zealand to Latin America to Europe, North America, etc. So what we do is we help them to raise the bar and to really create seamless experiences. So just like Amazon or just like Uber or just like Netflix, how can we raise the bar in customer experiences in banking? And we do this with a digital banking platform. So that's what you see here. Think of Backbase as a new customer interaction layer that will work on any device. It will also work directly with the end customers, as well as with relationship managers or customer support reps. It will really enable both the end customer as well as the bank employee to collaborate. And the whole goal, of course, is to kind of make those moments of truth, to really create customer journeys that support these different actors with their needs and with their use cases. Below the surface, the platform eventually, of course, will integrate into existing backend systems. It will integrate into core systems in the CRM system. It will integrate into fintech. And then in the middle, it will orchestrate the overall experience. It will make sure that everything is available on every screen size. It will enable people to jump from one screen to another screen format. It will enable people to do something in the evening and finish in the morning. It will enable a customer and an employee from the bank to work together in real time. That's what we call experience orchestration. This green triangle is also kind of the triangle with the faster speed. If you remember the two-speed architecture, this is the top triangle. This is loosely coupled from the core system. This is the space where you can really accelerate your innovation and where you have more freedom to create those seamless customer journeys.
Yep. Nothing to add.
Nothing to add. All right, then we can go to the final slide and actually go to the QA. So maybe to summarize it for most of the people here, in case you wonder, can you show a little bit more details? How does it work? Well, let's start at the top. The whole goal is to create seamless omni-channel customer journeys on any device. So from the large screen to the small screen. This needs to happen in retail banking, it needs to happen in business and corporate banking, it needs to happen in private banking and wealth management. So basically in the different lines of business. The typical way you expose this is in a web browser. People refer to this as online banking applications. It needs to happen in mobile device context. And of course, what we also just discussed, it needs to happen via these open APIs. So those are typically the channels, and they will support both employees as well as customers. Then you have the customer orchestration capabilities. So how do we make all of this happen? How do we make it secure? How do we make it personal and relevant? How can we leverage artificial intelligence to interpret customer data, to make good predictions? How can we make everything safe? How can we integrate to various backend systems? All those capabilities are over here. And they basically sit on top of your existing core systems, but they can also leverage fintech suppliers, like you see many nowadays. And it can also, of course, leverage APIs or capabilities provided by PSD2-enabled banks. So think of this whole platform really as an orchestration platform that can go to legacy systems, third-party banks and financial service providers, fintechs, and basically it enables you to create composite applications that can take data and functionality from any source, a fintech source, a PSD2 source, a core system source, and it gives you the freedom actually to compose those meaningful end customer applications. What is very important is, and I think that is kind of probably the essence of what you can define as the everyday bank, The everyday bank is just like WhatsApp or Facebook or Uber. It creates a connected experience. It's not a silo, but it's a seamless journey. There is no friction. And every time these apps become better, they make it easier for the customer, they reduce friction, and most of all, they make a connected experience. And the only way to create a connected experience is to have an open platform that can take functionality and data from multiple sources, fintech sources, PSD2 sources, core system sources, and it gives you the flexibility to compose that into a meaningful customer journey. In a way, we sometimes compare this with a restaurant. You have many different suppliers for the food. You can put it in your refrigerators, but at a given moment, there's a customer in the restaurant. How do you create the perfect meal? You need to basically have a platform that can access any ingredient, access the right recipe, do the cooking, and then service it just in time, tailor-made for this particular customer to make it seamless and perfect. That's it. Let's go to the Q&A. See if you have any questions, and there's already quite a few questions in the console. Please go to the GoToWebinar control panel that is hopefully on your screen. There is an item, a section which is called sections, and we will analyze those questions right now and give you an answer. The most frequently asked questions is the same one we always have, and that is, are you sharing the PowerPoint and do we have access to the recording? And the answer is yes. Within the next 24 hours, Backbase will share the online the recordings as well as the slides on SlideShare. We will send all of you an email with the URLs and the right links to the right information. So that will be available to you hopefully already before the weekend for sure. Tim, any particular questions you think we should be able to answer?
Yeah, I think this is an interesting one. How many months does it take on average to go live? As we talked about the MVP model being agile and so forth. So basically, Carlos is asking, if you go MVP, what's a typical average that you would be looking at compared to what you're used to?
Yeah. I would be very scared if it would take longer than 6 months, because that would really indicate that the scope is too big. Of course, there are guidelines for QA and full cycle testing, user acceptance testing, but typically we like to see in Backbase projects, we like to see the first results, at least with internal testers, within the first 2 months. I have to say that we have a lot of pre-built accelerators, so we don't have to start from scratch. And what is also very important, we really have a very active dialogue, what we see in the more healthy projects, where the product owners from the business are really challenged to focus on the 20/80 rule. What is really critical for your customers? What is must-have capability? And if you do that, then you can really have your first basic versions of the apps ready within 2 to 3 months, and then the full rollout probably within 3 to 4 months. That is on the shorter side. And that's also, of course, in the reality of a larger bank, which is already extremely fast. But it's also, the technology is not so much the blocker. I think it's more the process. How well do you understand agile? How well can you interact with a product owner to really apply a 20/80 rule? And how much are you willing to leverage these accelerators? So if you go extremely fast, I would say 2 months, but that's probably not so realistic. In the startup context, it is, but in the context of a larger banks, I would say initial MVP prototypes internally, working applications within 2 to 3 months for sure, with go live within 6 months. I also need to make a realistic remark that we also do see projects that take 6 to 12 months to go live. It really varies, and I think what is the difference between them is basically the way you manage the project.
Yep. All right, then we have a more philosophical question. If omnichannel is the future, why do some challenger banks focus on a mobile-only approach and don't go for the other channels?
Yeah, that's the joke we were just making. I think probably mobile is indeed going to be the primary citizen, but I'm sure that if these neobanks accelerate, or these mobile-first banks will accelerate, you also will see that there is a support model with a web browser, and you basically see it now also happening with Uber. There is an Uber app on the web browser for administration purposes. You don't use it that often. You see it with Netflix. You have to operate across multiple screens. Probably you're not going to equip your call center or your front office employees with a smartphone only. They like to have a larger screen. There are use cases in, for instance, corporate banking and wealth management, where there's so much information that you need to present. The larger screen is just more comfortable. But I do agree, in retail banking, in the context of the consumer retail banking, probably the mobile device will be the primary citizen, just like with Uber. But then for more advanced cases or different parts of the, let's say, the total customer population, a larger screen web browser is required as well. But it's probably going to be secondary. And that's only the customer perspective, right? You also still, and that's really omni-channel, how do you make that seamless transition and interaction, for instance, with a call center agent in case you need to have human assist? Or how do you do case management if you apply for a mortgage? There's definitely someone in the bank that needs to approve it.
Yeah.
You need to upload documents. You probably need to collaborate. So omni-channel is not just the device form factor, but it's also how do we enable different actors, different personas, for sure the customer and the bank employees, to collaborate seamlessly together.
Final question?
Yeah, let's go.
Great. Do you have a roster of fintech startups already connected to your platform, whose services you can leverage for the banks quickly?
Yeah, that's a really nice one. We do have, if you like to go learn more, go to marketplace.backbase.com. We call it the Open Banking Marketplace. It hosts around, I think, over 50 different fintech players in all sorts of different categories, from biometrics authentication, voice authentication, eye verification, into robo-advisory, into real-time collaboration between advisors and customers. All those new different best-of-breed fintech capabilities are there, at least 50, and we expect this marketplace will grow to around 100 different players that directly plug in to the Backbase platform. Maybe we can spend 2-3 more minutes. Are there other questions that are valuable?
Yeah.
There's one more question, Tim, here. What are the incentives for the bank to share customer data with account information service providers? Is there actually, next to compliance, is there one answer is you're forced by law,
That's
at least in the European context, but is there also an incentive, or is it just basically just compliancy?
It's a very good question. I think the gut reaction of the banks right now are mostly on we need to comply, and that's the project. Let's just comply.
Yeah.
But there's also other banks that really see it as an opportunity and drive it as such. I think the incentive in general will be if you are, as a bank, if you're not doing it, you're not compliant, so that's a very rigorous incentive. But on the other side, if you do comply and you do have this ecosystem of developers around your banking APIs that are pushing, basically your accounts, your products, your payment rails, if you will, and that might be an interesting business model as well. It's not only they're not just only taking from you; they might as well bring back customers over time. I can imagine there might be a bank with an ecosystem surrounding itself. That's what we see happening already.
Yeah, so I think from a compliance point of view, banks probably will keep the APIs at a minimum, and also they will try to keep the cost at a minimum. So basically, it's just a compliance rule, and you will see underinvestments, you will see delay, etc. People won't go that fast. However, there's also a group of more, I would say, forward-looking banks that really start to invest in API gateways, where they say, we're not going to give it away for free, but we're going to give it as part of a business model. So, for instance, we would like to do more loan origination via our platform. We like to do more payments via our platform. They say, we own the technologies, so they basically start to act as a factory, just like Facebook. We have the platform, they open up those APIs, and there will be a business model. So there will be an economic incentive. Next to giving stuff away for free, they would like to drive more mortgages or more payments. So they create a larger ecosystem, or they create larger volumes, which is kind of giving them a revenue stream.
Yeah.
So there's kind of the basic compliancy rule, which is must have. And it's basically just extremely annoying. I think most banks think this is very annoying, and they like to delay. There's another play where you can say, I like to create more volume on my platform, therefore I make it more open. A very good example of this, for instance, is PayPal. PayPal has a transaction payment engine, and they made it extremely easy, or Stripe even better. They made it extremely easy for third-party developers to integrate the Stripe payment capability directly in any e-commerce scenario. Hence, with their APIs, they are driving more traffic. But that's more on the payment side. It's not on the account integration aggregation side.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's another question, Tim, and let's really make that the final one. We're a little bit over the hour.
Yep.
How do you, in this whole onboarding process, what are the mechanisms actually? How do you identify and trust a non-client? How can you do it like the 60-second onboarding we did in New York? How do you make sure that you don't have a relation with someone yet, and still how do you authorize them and trust them that they can open an account and you actually trust them and you onboard them fully digitally? Can you maybe elaborate?
Yeah, sure. So related to the 60 seconds onboarding concept, if you look at that particular demo, you'll find that a lot of my wording is on compliance, making sure that we have driver's license, facial recognition, a digital signature, pretty much anything that you would typically do in a branch to validate someone, that it's a real person, that they have proper documentation, that their credit score checks out, and so forth. We simply digitized it. And by digitizing it, you still have know your customer, let's say, processes in place. You still have AML, anti-money laundering, in place. You have all those checks and balances. However, you've made them less frustrating. And that's how we basically, as an extreme example, said 60 seconds onboarding, we can do it. But then again, this still needs to follow the relevant regulation and the relevant storage of data in the backend and so forth. So there's a lot of different fintechs that we're leveraging to make that happen, of course. But that's how it works. I hope that
yeah. So I think the net summary, I guess, then, Tim, is I also kind of onboarded recently with a bunch of neobanks, and it's quite interesting. They use the smartphone. You make photos of your driver license, your passport, whatever is an authentic document. In one case, I actually got connected via the smartphone with a live call center agent who I had to identify myself that I was alive. I had to show my face and my passport together via the camera of the smartphone. This person could truly validate that I was alive, that it was me with my face and the face in the passport. Then originally making a photo of the passport, scanning it, doing a few KYC checks, and basically all the stuff people normally do in a branch was now done digitally by just using the camera of the smartphone. So I think the smartphone and scanning technologies and OCR, which is object character recognition capability, so you can scan photos and driver license and passport photos, and you can transform that, you can archive that, you get even a human validation via video collaboration. Those are examples of how you basically can fully digitize the stuff you normally have to do in a branch. So I guess the smartphone and the camera are going to be very important for that part. Yeah. All right. Cool. Thanks, everybody. We would like to wrap it up for today. Thank you very much for attending. Today's outcome was great. We had over 500 live attendees, so thank you all for being here. I hope it was valuable. The recording and the presentation will be available in the next 48 hours, and we will send you an email with the instructions to find it. For now, thank you very much, and hopefully you will enjoy your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.